Hello,
결혼식장,
subscribers who have found a
황금빛 조명
peaceful
아래 신랑
retirement.
신부가
People
입장합니다.
say that marriage is the sweet fruit of
시선이
love
집중된
and a
가운데
peaceful sanctuary for
예상치
life.
못한 순간이
I
옵니다.
firmly believe that purely and
소년이
completely,
나타나 쪽지를
at least for
신부에게
that
내밉니다.
moment, when I wore a pure white
쪽지에는
wedding dress
아주머니,
and held the hand of the man I
살려주세요.
loved most in the
라는
world,
글귀가 있습니다.
I thought I was the happiest woman
신부는
in the
충격에
world.
휩싸입니다.
But little did I know that the heaven I
신랑은
stood
믿을 수
upon was a
없다는 듯
precipice
뒤를
filled with
돌아봅니다.
terrible lies and secrets.
식장은
The
김장감에
tragedy of my life
휩싸입니다.
began with the appearance of a child and a bad
결혼식은
note on
드라마로
what should have
변합니다.
been my happiest day. That
빗소리가
small
이
note
순간을
not only shattered my
고조시킵니다.
dreams but also forced me to make a cruel choice. Should I turn back to protect myself? Or should I run into the street to save a life I had never seen before? The wedding hall, lavishly decorated with soft music and thousands of white roses, was filled with the blessings of the guests. Everything was perfect. Just like the man beside me, Kim Min-jun. My fiancé-to-be, Min-jun, was a talented and gentlemanly architect. He held my hand tightly, and his eyes gazing at me were filled with love and tenderness. Yoon-seo, he whispered in my ear. Thank you for coming to me. From today on, I will bring you only the best in the world. I smiled, a contented smile welling up from the depths of my heart. In our 2 years together and 1 year of love, Min-jun had never once made me feel uncomfortable. He was always attentive and considerate, always putting me first. He respected Jael, my kindergarten teacher, and was as affectionate to our family as a son. My parents considered him their own son, and my friends envied me, saying I had found the perfect man, someone who would only find me after countless lifetimes of accumulated virtue. I believed that too. When Miss Jules solemnly asked us to exchange rings, every guest in the hall held their breath. It was the moment Min-jun took my hand and placed the sparkling diamond ring on my ring finger. But at that very moment, a young, frightened voice rose from the end of the hall, shattered the solemn atmosphere. Dad! Everyone in the hall simultaneously turned around. Yes, a boy, about 7 years old, stood there, wearing a small, pretty tuxedo. The suit looked a little worn though. The child, with large dark eyes, was staring straight at us. He seemed very intelligent, but his eyes held an indescribable sadness. The hall began to stir. People stared at each other, unable to comprehend what was happening. Dad? Who are they calling Dad? My heart began to pound wildly. I turned to Min-jun and tried to explain. But for the first time, I saw the color fade from his face. His usually warm smile had frozen, replaced by confusion, fear, and a hint of dread. His mother, Mrs. Kim, who had been sitting in the VIP section, also stood up hurriedly, her face filled with concern. The child, oblivious to the curiosity and childish stares of those around him, began walking toward the stage with small but determined steps. Min-jun quickly signaled for security, but it was too late. The child had already run to the foot of the stage, staring up at Min-jun with wide eyes and speaking more clearly. Dad, Hae-jun, I forgot. This time there was no room for doubt. The wedding hall seemed to burst with the sound of chattering. All surrounding noise faded to my ears, leaving only the 2 words Dad lingering in my mind. The sky and earth seemed to spin. The gorgeous wedding dress felt heavy, like a coffin squeezing me. I looked at Min-jun, desperately begging him to deny it, even if it was just a single word. But he bowed his head, unable to look me in the eye. His silence was the cruelest of poets. It turned out that the man I dedicated my life to, my perfect man, had a son like this. He had deceived me. He had shamelessly deceived me. Stop it! I screamed in a voice filled with pain. The music was wonderful, Mr. Jewel was flustered, and the hall fell silent. I shook Min-jun's hand away. I couldn't stand it another second. The romance, the happiness, it was all a sham. I felt like a fool, a clown at my own wedding. Min-jun, what is this? Please explain, I nearly cried. Only then did Min-jun look up. He reached out and tried to take my hand, but I stepped back. Yoon-seo, calm down and listen to me. Explain? What more is there to explain? A 6-year-old child means he had a child long before he met me. He kept a devastating secret from me. His love for me, his promises, everything was a lie. Pain quickly turned to anger and contempt. I can't marry a man like this. I can't start a life built on lies. There's no need for explanation. I spoke firmly, my voice as cold as ice. What kind of marriage will we have? With that, I turned around, grabbed the hem of my dress, and tried to run away from this gloomy place. I didn't want to see Minjun's face anymore, and I didn't want to hear a word from him. It was over. But as I took a step forward, a gentle hand kept grabbing the hem of my dress. I turned around and saw that child, Hanai. He was already behind me. His eyes no longer showed fear, but instead were filled with desperation. Saying nothing, he placed a crumpled note in my palm. I was bewildered, not knowing what was happening. Minjun and Mrs. Kim, who were behind me, saw this, and their faces paled, running to pull Henny away. Hajun, don't disturb him. Come to your grandmother. But Henny held my hand tightly, her eyes pleading. I had a feeling something was wrong. I clutched the note tightly in my hand. Before Mrs. Kim could drag Hanai away, I took a few steps back and unfolded it. Inside was the child's crooked handwriting, written in a fine-point pencil. But the contents froze my whole body, halting my resolve to leave. The note read, Madam, please save my mother. Subscribers, please save my mother. But the child's mother had already passed away, as Minjun later explained. But why would the child write such a desperate plea for help? Was there a far more horrific secret hidden behind the lie about her son's existence? Madam, please save my mother. The 6 words on the crumpled note still felt warm in my palm, but they weighed like 1,000 pounds, dragging my happy world down a cliff. My mind was racing, and my heart pounded like it was going to burst out of my chest. Save my mother. Where did this child come from, and who was his mother that he was asking for my help? As 1,000 questions raced through my mind, I saw Minjun's face, his face fading, Mrs. Kim's shocked expression, and the wedding hall filled with chattering guests. My breath caught in my throat and my vision began to blur, and in that moment, I realized what I had to do. I couldn't call off this wedding right now. I couldn't make a fuss until I knew the truth. If I did, I'd only be the laughingstock. And more importantly, I lose the chance to uncover the secret behind that desperate rescue request. I needed time. I needed an excuse to get out of this situation. I gasped for breath and slowly fell to the floor. Yoonseo, Mijun screamed. The wedding hall was a mess. People crowded around me, and I pretended to faint from the shock and closed my eyes. But I held the note tightly in my hand, the only evidence, the only link connecting me to the terrible truth I couldn't yet name. I was taken to the bridal chamber. My parents and friends, worried, surrounded me. I pretended to slowly wake up, telling them I felt dizzy from being so nervous and sleepless. Everyone believed me, but only I knew that the dizziness inside me was 100 times more intense. After everyone briefly left to give me rest, only Minju and Mrs. Kim and I remained in the room. Then the second play began. Mingjun sat by the bed and held my hand. His face was etched with pain and regret. Yoonseo, I'm sorry. I should have told you everything sooner. It's my fault for deceiving you. Mrs. Kim sat in a chair opposite me, her sharp eyes piercing with deep sorrow. I'm also at fault. Yoonseo, I was the one who advised you not to tell Minjun, for fear you'd think it was okay. And then Minjun began to speak. He told a tragic yet perfectly logical story. He said Hanai's child was conceived from a relationship with a woman named Era, whom he had met in college. They were deeply in love, but Era was mentally unstable, sensitive, and prone to negative thoughts. After giving birth to Hajun, her condition worsened, and she began to show signs of postpartum depression. Minjun tried to care for her, but her condition never improved. It reached its peak last year. He spoke in a choked voice. She had been in a serious car accident, suffering severe brain damage. She survived, but her mind was completely destroyed. She sometimes came to, sometimes not, and lived in constant fear, unrecognized. Mrs. Kim continued, her voice heavy with sorrow. She said her parents had passed away early, as no family had been able to find her. Our Min-jun couldn't bear to abandon her, so he had her admitted to a high-end nursing home at his church for treatment. But in the end, the child couldn't survive. Yoon-seo, he passed away almost a year ago. Mi-jun buried his face in my hands and sobbed. His shoulders trembled. I wanted to tell you from the beginning, but I was afraid. I was afraid you'd think I still hadn't forgotten my ex. I was afraid you wouldn't accept what I'd done. Mother was right. There was a past, and I should have started a new life with you. After the wedding, I was going to introduce Haejun to you and raise the child together. I'm sorry, Yoon-seo. I'm so sorry. It was the perfect story. A responsible and caring man, a thoughtful future mother-in-law, a poor child who lost her mother. Everything was logical and explainable. It explained why Mi-jun had deceived me, why Mrs. Kim had gone along with it. His lies were transformed into pity, a painful experience. If I hadn't had that note in my hand, I would have believed it. I might have been moved by his loyalty, embraced him, and forgiven him. But the note was in my hand like a hot puddle. Ma'am, please save my mother. If Haejun's mother died a year ago, why would a 6-year-old write something like that? Children can't tell such complex lies. That rescue plea couldn't have been a mistake. Two thoughts clashed violently in my head. On one side, Min-jun's rational explanation, and on the other, the child's illogical rescue plea. Reason whispered to me to trust Min-jun, but my intuition, as a kindergarten teacher and a woman who spends every day with children, told me something was wrong. It screamed. Then why was Haejun here today? I asked, still weak. Mrs. Kim sighed. Perhaps the housekeeper was careless. A child longing for his father overheard the adults talking about his father getting married today and went out alone to find him. Poor thing. It was another perfect explanation. I couldn't refute anything. I closed my eyes, pretending to be tired. I need to rest a little. I need time to think. Mi-jun and Mrs. Kim looked at each other. They probably thought I had softened their hearts. Okay, get some rest. I'll go out and explain to the students and sort things out. Our wedding was just postponed for a while, wasn't it? Right? He asked with cold, hopeful eyes. I nodded silently instead of answering. As they left, I slowly opened my eyes. The once gorgeous room was eerily cold. I took out the note and stared at the 6 letters. No matter how perfect Min-jun's lie, it couldn't erase the existence of this note. And I knew my fight had only just begun. It was a fight not only for my own truth, but also for a woman named Era, whom I never met. Later that day, it was officially announced that our wedding had been temporarily postponed due to the bride's health. This explanation was enough to quell the curiosity of my friends and relatives, but it couldn't quell the storm raging inside me. I excused myself by needing some quiet time to recover and asked Min-jun and Mrs. Kim for permission to spend a few days with my family. Min-jun readily agreed, perhaps thinking I needed time to accept the truth and gather my thoughts. He pretended to be very thoughtful, calling every day to check in on me and sending me flowers and nutritious food. Ruchi was perfectly portraying his potential groom. But I knew there was an invisible watchful eye behind that attention. He wanted to make sure I was still under his control. Only when I returned to my parents' home and embraced them did I truly feel a sense of relief. After hearing Min-jun's official story, my parents were deeply sympathetic. My mother even scolded me, saying I had failed to understand the pain of other men and had left him to bear the pain alone. I simply remained silent. I couldn't voice my suspicions. I didn't want to drag my parents into this dangerous mess without any evidence. That night, I couldn't sleep.
I lay in my familiar bed, but my mind wandered. I took out Haejun's note and read it hundreds of times. Ma'am, please save my mother. There was a heartbreaking desperation in that innocent handwriting. The boy wouldn't have written such a letter if his mother had truly passed away. There must have been a story behind it. That woman, RR, might still be alive. But if she was, Why did Minjin lie? Why did he and his mother have to stage such an elaborate play? Unanswered questions swirled through my mind. I felt lonely and helpless. I needed someone to talk to, someone to offer wise advice. And then my friend, Sujin, came to mind. Sujin, my best friend since college, is now a brilliant and sharp lawyer. She's always had a cool head and incredible logical analysis skills. I picked up the phone, hesitated for a moment, and then decided to call Sujin. Hello, Yunseo, are you okay? I heard you collapsed at the wedding. Are you okay? Sujin's voice was filled with worry. Beyond math, I gasped. Sujin, there's something I need your help with. It's very serious. I told Sujin everything, from Haijin's appearance to Minjin's perfect explanation to the contents of the note. I tried to keep my emotions in check, suppressing my words. After hearing the whole story, Sujin remained silent for a long time. I could tell she was analyzing everything. Yunseo, his voice became much more serious. Listen carefully to me. First, you must never completely trust Minjin. His story is too perfect. And anything too perfect usually hides a lie. Sujin's words were like a shower of cold water, shaking me to my senses. Second, Haijin's note is the key. There's no way a 6-year-old could suddenly write something like that. My intuition was completely right. The child's mother was very likely still alive, and my heart pounded even harder. There was someone who believed me. So, what should I do now? I asked with a slightly trembling voice. The most important thing right now is that you remain calm. You absolutely cannot let Minjin and his mother know you're suspicious. You must pretend to accept their explanation. You must pretend you need time to understand and forgive them. Only then will they let their guard down and I have a chance to uncover the truth. In her lawyerly, calculating voice, Sujin continued, in the meantime, you need to gather as much information as possible about that woman, Error. Even the smallest details will do. Her name, her hometown, her old friends. Anything you can extract from Minjin as naturally as possible. You need to become an actress, Yunseo. An actress. I never imagined I'd have to do something like that. But Sujin was right. This was the only way. If I mess up now, I might never know the truth. And if Error is truly in danger, my actions could hurt her. I understand. My voice became firmer. But I'm so scared. Sujin, what if things are even more dire than I imagined? Fear won't solve anything, Sujin reassured me. You're not alone, I'm here. Do as I say. Gather information and send it all to me. I'll align it with yours. We'll find the truth together. That phone call with Sujin gave me strength and clear direction. I was no longer confused and lost. I knew what I had to do. I would be an actor, playing the role of a sorrowful, vulnerable woman trying to deceive the enemy. I would be an obedient lamb. But beneath the white fur, there would be the sharpness of a fox stalking its prey. The plan was set. The first step was to find a clue, a starting point. And then a detail suddenly occurred to me. It was a tiny detail I'd never paid attention to before. In Minjin's study, among the intricate architectural drawings, hung a beautiful landscape painting, but without the artist's signature. Perhaps that was the first key to this journey. After talking to Sujin, I began my role. 2 days later, I called Minjin first. I told him I'd thought a lot and understood his pain. I told him it would take a little more time, but I wouldn't give up on our love because of this. Minjin, beyond his usual grumbling, seemed overjoyed and relieved. He constantly thanked me and promised to repay me. He seemed to believe I'd completely fallen for his sympathy trap. The first step was successful. My plan was to return to the house Minjin and I had prepared for our new home. I told him I wanted to clean the house myself, organize my belongings, and prepare for Heijin. Minjin, without a doubt, gave me the keys and told me I could come whenever I wanted. That house was no longer my future gospel. It was a crime scene I had to investigate on my own. My target was clear: Minjin's study, where he kept his most personal belongings, and especially the unnamed landscape painting. I chose a weekday afternoon when he was sure to be busy at work and went to the house. As I opened the door and stepped inside, an unfamiliar feeling washed over me. Everything still smelled of fresh paint, and the furniture was arranged to suit our tastes. This could have been a paradise of happiness. But now it was just a heartache. Shrugging off my feelings of vulnerability, I headed straight for Minjin's study. It was a very modern space, with tall bookshelves filled with books on architecture and art. Across from my work desk, a landscape painting hung on the wall. It depicted a hill covered in yellow sunflowers. In the distance, a green pine forest shrouded in mist. It was a very characteristic Jeju landscape. The painting possessed a vibrant vitality, yet there was a certain sadness in the free brushstrokes. I once asked Minjin about the artist of this painting. He simply smiled and said it was a gift from an old friend who didn't like to reveal his name. At the time, I believed him. But now, I had a strong feeling that this painting was related to error. I carefully removed the painting from the wall. It was quite heavy. The wooden frame was very sturdy. My heart pounded. Would I find something? Or was this all just my overactive suspicions? I flipped the painting over. At first, I saw nothing. Just dark brown plywood. I was a little disappointed. But when I caught the window light, I saw something. In the lower right corner, there were tiny, faint letters engraved, almost invisible against the wood. I had to squint and concentrate to read them. They were names and places, engraved in a very artistic, soft handwriting I knew. Jeju 2018. It was 6 years ago. My heart pounded. I knew. She was right. She was the artist of this painting. And it was painted in Jeju 6 years ago. It coincided exactly with the time Heijin was born. Everything began to click together. Minjin had lied. He lied not only about Heijin's existence, but also about the artist who had painted this painting. Why did it have to be like this? If Error was just a lover who had passed away, why did he have to hide her traces so thoroughly? The excitement of finding a clue quickly turned to utter fear. This secret was far greater than I had imagined. I quickly put the painting back where it belonged, determined to leave no trace. I glanced round before leaving. My eyes landed on Minjin's laptop. What could it possibly be? I hesitated. Hacking someone else's computer is a form of privacy dementia. But in this situation, I had no other choice. I tried several familiar passwords. His birthday, our anniversary, they were all wrong. Heijin suddenly came to mind. I entered his birthday. The screen brightened and unlocked. The password was correct. My heart sank. It turned out that his son had always held a special place in his heart. I quickly inserted the USB drive Sujin had given me and selectively copied the files that seemed suspicious. There were folders with strange names or passwords. Time was limited, so I had to process everything as quickly as possible. Leaving the house, my heart was heavy. I had seized the first clues: the name Error, the place name Jeju, and a USB drive filled with secrets I hadn't yet opened. One immediately called Sujin. Sujin, I found it. That woman's name is somehow related to Jeju Island. My voice was a mixture of excitement and anxiety. Sujin, beyond math, was also overjoyed. Good job, Yunseo. You did really well. Send me everything you have. With that name, I'll search the entire island to find her. I knew this was only the beginning. But a secret door had opened, and no matter how scared I was, I had to go inside to find the truth. There was no going back for me. Behind me lay a cliff of lies, and ahead lay a foggy path filled with unpredictable dangers. As soon as she received the information from me, Sujin took action. With the name Nar, the place named Jeju, and the field of art, my friend began a search, mobilizing all his connections and investigative skills as a lawyer. Just 2 days later, Sujin called me back with a serious voice. Yunseo, we found it. But the story was much more complicated than we had imagined. According to the information Sujin had uncovered, the woman's full name was Chehara. She was quite well known among young Jeju artists. Air was known as a naturally talented artist, and she painted landscapes in a unique, romantic yet deeply sorrowful style. Her paintings were highly regarded by experts, and she was predicted to become a prominent figure in the future. Aira came from a wealthy family. Her parents were businessmen who ran several mini hotels on Jeju Island, but they passed away in a car accident just after she graduated from college, leaving her a considerable inheritance. She and Minjin met when he visited Jeju Island to work on a resort design project. They fell in love and had Haejin. All of this information matched Minjin's story, at least initially. But the real story was what happened next. About 5 years ago, a major event shook the Jeju art world. Aira's studio, a beautiful wooden house nestled in a pine forest, burned down overnight. Her most precious works, paintings she was preparing for a major solo exhibition, were all engulfed in flames. Fortunately, Aira wasn't in the studio at the time. The fire was ruled a tragic accident caused by an electrical short. And after that incident, Sujin's voice became hoarse. Choi Air suddenly disappeared from the art world. She canceled all her plans, stopped participating in any activities, and no one could contact her. Everyone assumed she had collapsed, lost all her creative inspiration, and gone into seclusion. No one had heard from her since. I felt a chill run down my spine at those words, missing. An artist in her prime, vanishing without a trace after a mysterious accident. This couldn't be a coincidence. Sujin, you also believe that the incident wasn't an accident, right? I asked. A terrifying theory began to form in my head. I think so too, Sujin replied. What a coincidence. The topic that destroyed her entire career. And then her disappearance right after. This was most likely a premeditated scenario. If it was, who was the mastermind? And what was his motive? All suspicions were focused on one person, Minjin. Perhaps Minjin created the topic to destroy Arashi's spirit, taking advantage of her most broken moment to imprison her. But why love? No, there's no love so cruel and vicious. There must be another, darker reason. What about the USB? Did you see what was inside? I asked Sujin. Yeah, most of it was Minjin's design drawings. But there was a folder called Nursing Plan, which was locked with a very complex password. I've asked a friend who's an IT professional to decrypt it, but it'll probably take a few more days. Nursing Plan. The name sounded ordinary, but in this situation, it felt creepy. Maybe it was the detailed plan to imprison Alcil. While waiting for Sujin's results, I decided I couldn't stay still. I had to approach the only person who could give me the answer, even if it was just a piece of a puzzle. That person was Haejin. I called Minjin and told him I was feeling much better and wanted to meet Haejin. I told him I needed time to get to know him and build a bond with him before I could accept him. Minjin happily agreed, without a second thought. He offered to bring Hani to the park near our house on the weekend so we could have some alone time. He still thought I was a submissive lamb, slowly adapting to his plan. Little did I know that the sheep was just about ready to show its claws. Meeting Haejin was a gamble. How could I open the heart of a 6-year-old with so many scars and wounds to begin with and get him to trust me? How could I ask questions that would jog his memory without startling him? I didn't know. I just knew I had to try. For Heijin, for his unfortunate mother, and for myself. The truth was close at hand, but the path to it was thorny. And my next step might decide everything. That weekend, Minjin brought Heijin to the park as promised. He tried to create a fun family atmosphere. He bought Heijin ice cream and balloons. But I could clearly see the awkwardness in his every action, the fear hidden behind his eyes. Heijin rarely spoke. He only responded softly when asked questions, and he always avoided his father's gaze. After a while, I suggested that Minjin go ahead if he needed to run errands, and that Heijin and I could spend some time playing together. I tried to make it seem as natural as possible. Minjin hesitated for a moment, then quickly agreed. He probably thought it was a good sign that I was genuinely trying to get closer to his son. With Minjin gone, the air between Heijin and me became much more relaxed. I didn't rush to ask questions. We simply played simple games, riding her down the slide with him. As a kindergarten teacher, I knew how to make children feel comfortable and safe. I told Heijin a story and invited his colleagues over. Gradually, Heijin began to open up. He smiled more and sometimes even spoke to me first. When I felt the time was right, I slowly brought up the subject. I sat down next to Heijin on the bench and handed him a pencil case and a sketchbook. Heijin is really good at drawing. He draws often at home too. I asked casually. Heijin nodded. Double quotes yes. Your mom taught you how to draw. My heart beat a little faster. Wow, your mom's an artist too. She must be a great artist, isn't she? Yes, Heijin said. There was a hint of pride in his voice. My mom's the best artist in the world. Mom draws flowers, trees, and lakes. The detail of the lake caught my attention. So, Heijin's house is near a lake. I asked. Heijin paused for a moment, as if trying to remember something. He looked up at me, his big, round eyes a little dazed. Our house has a very large window. Looking outside, you can see a very large lake. Mom often sat there and drew. That's right. A house with a window overlooking a lake. This was a crucial clue. So, where is your mother now? I asked, trying to be as gentle as possible so as not to scare him. The smile vanished from Heijin's lips. He lowered his head, and his voice became barely audible. Mom, I'm sick. You have to stay in your room. You can't come out. What's wrong with you? I asked, my chest tightening. Heijin shook his head. I don't know. Mom just gets sad often. She cries alone. Grandma said Mom was sick and had to take medicine to sleep. She had to take medicine every day to sleep. The child's naive words sent shivers down my spine. Could it be tranquilizers? Were they using drugs to control Arashi, making her weak and dependent? It was a terrifying theory, but it explained why Arashi couldn't escape on her own. Then, Honey can go into Mom's room and play with us, I asked, suppressing the trembling in my voice. Ha-jun shook his head sharply. No. Grandma won't let me in. Mom said I have to be quiet. I can only see Mom through the crack in the door. I miss Mom so much. As I said this, 2 streams of tears rolled down his cheeks. He tried not to cry out loud, but his small shoulders continued to shake. My heart shattered at the sight. I pulled Ha-jun into his sitting position and gently patted his back. Don't cry. Don't cry. Andy is here. Everything will be okay. Now, compassion for the mother and son overcame all fear in my heart. I no longer thought about the pawn or my own safety. There was only one thought. I must save them. I must rescue Era from that house, give her freedom, and give this poor child her mother back. I handed Heijin a sketchbook. Ha, Mum, could you draw the house you and your mother live in? And the lake too. Heijin nodded and quickly wiped away his tears. The child picked up a piece of paper and began to draw diligently. A landscape slowly emerged under the 6-year-old's innocent brushstrokes. A house with a red thatched roof perched on a gentle hill. In front of the house was a vast lake surrounded by a green pine forest. There was a very special detail. A small tower with a round window towered high above the house. I knew this drawing was the next key, the map that would lead me to where Error was imprisoned. I carefully placed the drawing in my bag. My meeting with Heijin gave me invaluable information, but it also put me in even more danger. Minjin and Mrs. Kim knew I was trying to uncover the truth, and they wouldn't stay silent. I had to act quickly and carefully before they realized and stopped me. My conversation with Hyuni lifted some of the veil of secrecy, but the darkest and most frightening part was still the lake hidden within the house. As soon as I received Hyuni's drawings and the fragments of information gleaned from his memories, I immediately sent them to Sujin. Armed with this valuable data, red roof, a chicken, round windows, a lake with a wide hill, and a pine forest, it didn't take long for Sujin to narrow down the area. The most likely location was near Lake Han on Jeju Island. It had all the elements: a lake, pine hills, and independently built villas. Sujin asked a friend in the Jeju real estate industry to research all the villas in the area, and the results were as expected. There was one villa that perfectly matched Hyuni's description and drawings. It was a French-style mansion perched on a secluded hill overlooking the lake. And most importantly, the villa belonged to none other than Minjin's mother, Mrs. Kim. Everything became crystal clear. This was where Error was being held. It was a prison disguised as a villa, a luxurious, heavily guarded villa. Chujin had told me that the locals rarely lived there, that they'd occasionally seen a black sedan coming and going, and that the housekeepers there were very reserved and didn't interact with the neighbors at all. All of this further supported our hypothesis. Yunseo, what should we do now? Sujin asked over the phone. Worry filled her voice. We can't report this to the police. We have no direct evidence. If the police go and find nothing, or if Minjin and his mother move somewhere else, all our efforts will be in vain. They'll be even more wary, and we might have no chance. Sujin was right. We couldn't act rashly. This was a battle of wits, and we had to make sure we were making only sure moves. I thought for a long time. Silence and waiting would only make Era more dangerous. I couldn't sit still any longer. It was time for me to confront Minjin myself. I had to corner him and force him to admit the truth, even if it would be very dangerous for me. Sujin, I'm going to talk to Minjin myself, I said with a determined voice. Are you crazy? Sujin shouted over the phone. It's too dangerous. What if he just leaves? It'll be okay, I reassured my friend. I won't deal with it alone. I'll choose a public place, and I'll even record it. What could he possibly do to me in a crowded place? I just wanted one last thing. I just wanted to make sure Era was really there. If he admitted it, we'd have a justification for our next move. I was very worried, but Sujin eventually agreed to my plan. She strongly urged me to be very careful, always keep a safe distance, and to call her immediately if I saw any signs of danger. I arranged to meet Minjin the next evening at a fancy cafe in the city center. I told him I'd thought a lot and decided to forgive him, but there were a few questions I wanted to clarify before moving forward. Minjin, still feeling like I was his superior, happily accepted. He came dressed smartly, as if it were a reconciliation date, even carrying a large bouquet of roses. I looked at him with a bitterness and contempt that stung my heart. How could this man be so completely hypocritical? After a few formal greetings, I stopped circling. I took a miniature picture of Heijin and placed it on the table. Minjin, can you tell me where this house is? Minjin's smile hardened as he looked at the photo. He looked at me with a searching gaze. This is just a drawing Heijin drew. It's just something children imagined. Don't worry about it. He tried to change the subject. I laughed. Imagination? But how could a child's imagination so strangely match the lake and villa in Jeju Island, registered under your mother's name? Minjin, my words were like a bombshell. Minjin's face immediately paled. He couldn't imagine I'd even find out this much information. Confusion quickly turned to anger. He stopped acting. Who told you this? You sent someone to spy on me, Yunseo, he growled. My voice lost its usual warmth. I didn't answer his question. I looked him straight in the eye and spoke sharply. Era, is she there? Answer me, Minjin. Is Choi-era really imprisoned in that villa? Minjin remained silent for a long moment. He stared intently at me, his eyes chillingly cold. The air between us was tense, like a taut bowstring. I sensed danger looming, but I didn't back down. I needed to hear an answer. Finally, he burst out laughing. It was a piercing, baby-like laugh. Yes, he said through gritted teeth. What if that woman is there? His admission, though expected, made my heart sink. Then, it was true. All my suspicions were true. A person was imprisoned, deprived of their freedom, but why? Why would he do such a thing? My voice trembled. Did he keep her locked up because he loved her so much? Minjin laughed again. It was an even more frightening laugh. Love. Yunseo, you're so naive. I thought everything in the world revolved around love. So his words left me speechless. If not love, then what? For some reason more terrifying than pathological obsession, he had admitted. This confrontation had yielded results. But I knew this was the moment the real danger began. Minjin had revealed his cards, and he wouldn't let anyone stand in his way. What could I do? Minjin's raw, defiant answer made my blood run cold. He not only admitted, but showed no trace of guilt or fear. The mask of a gentlemanly, warm man had completely fallen away, revealing the cold, staring face of a stranger, a devil. I suppressed a shiver and clutched my phone, which was on record mode, in my pocket. You have no right to do this. Minjin, that's illegal detention. You'll go to jail. I tried to threaten him with the law. But Minjin only laughed, his contemptuous smile adoring me. Prison Yunseo, you're still so naive. What do you think you can do to me? Do you have any proof? A twisted note from a child. Or the words of a jealous kindergarten teacher who felt cheated. He leaned back in his chair and folded his arms. His demeanor was utterly confident and arrogant. I'll tell you, I know. She's sick. I have all the medical certificates from the hospital saying she's mentally ill. They're signed by the best doctors, and as her closest relative, and the father of her son, I have legal guardianship rights. I'm taking her to a quiet place to recuperate, away from the noise of the world. I understood it was all out of concern for her. Everything I do is perfectly legal. I was speechless. Mental health certificate, legal guardianship rights. He calculated everything, creating a perfect legal trap, an invisible prison that no one could break. This is ridiculous. I stammered. She's not crazy. If she were, how could she have taught her son to call for help? Minjin laughed out loud. The laughter was loud enough to make the people at the next table look up. Crazy people don't know they're crazy, Yunseo. They sometimes lose consciousness for a moment, then fall back into delusion. What value would a mentally ill person's words have in court? He stopped laughing, his eyes sharp. He leaned in and lowered his voice to a threatening tone. I tried to give you a comfortable life. But you chose the hard way. Fine. If you continue to mess this up, if you report me to the police, or if you do anything stupid, I won't let Air stay at the villa anymore. I'll use my guardianship to send her to a real mental hospital, a national mental hospital. You know what it's like there, Yunseo. It's not a sanatorium. It's hell on earth. She'll have to live with truly insane people, and she'll be injected with the strongest tranquilizers every day until she's truly insane. She'll live a life worse than death. And you brought it all on yourself. You'll be the one who pushed Hyejin's mother into hell. Think about it carefully. His words stabbed my heart like a poisoned dagger. They were cruel and vicious. He wasn't just threatening me. He was using Ara's life and future to blackmail me. He made me a pawn in his game. If I move forward, Ara will be in danger. If I back down, I'll become an accomplice who turned a blind eye to a life in need. I sat motionless. My whole body went cold. I was so taken in by this man. He wasn't just a simple conman. He was a true devil. He was clever, calculating, and would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. Tears welled up in my eyes. I felt helpless and hopeless. What should I do now? All paths seemed blocked. Seeing my panic, Minjin changed his attitude again. He reached out and took my hand, speaking again in a hypocritically soft and caring voice. Yunseo, I didn't want things to end up like this. I truly love you. I just want to build a perfect family with you and Hyejin. Error is in the past. It's a burden I have to carry. I just want you to understand and empathize with me. Can't we just forget this? Let's start over. I'll make it up to you. He was using both the carrot and the stick. He threatened and coaxed. He wanted me to surrender and live according to his plan. I looked at his outstretched hand and then at his face. Behind his handsome, warm exterior lay a rotten, evil soul. I couldn't do it. I couldn't join hands with the devil. I couldn't ignore the child's plea for help or the life of an innocent woman, no matter the cost. I took a deep breath and tried to regain my composure. I couldn't show him my weakness. I needed time to think, I said hoarsely. Then I got up and hurried out of the cafe without looking at him again. I walked aimlessly. Tears flowed endlessly. The confrontation ended in my defeat. He had exploited my weakness and made me his puppet. But he was wrong. He didn't realize that despair can sometimes be the source of extraordinary courage. He thought he had cornered me, but in reality, he had only given me one more reason to fight to the end. After the intense confrontation at the cafe, I returned home in panic and despair. I immediately called Sujin and relayed the entire conversation, including Minjin's brutal threats. Even Sujin was speechless. That piece of trash. He's not even human anymore. He's a demon. He's a demon. He let out a curse he rarely let out. He planned it so meticulously, Yunseo. The mental health diagnosis, the guardianship, all these are powerful legal shields. Unless we can prove the documents were forged or that he obtained them through illicit means, it'll be very difficult to turn things around. Sujin's analysis only deepened my despair. What should we do now? It seemed like every path led to a dead end. But Sujin continued with a determined voice. It's not like there's no way out. The more confident he is, the more vulnerabilities he'll have. The most important thing right now is to buy time. You have to keep acting, Yunseo. But this time, it's a different role. I was dumbfounded. A different role. You have to pretend to completely surrender to him. Soo-jin explained. Pretend to be afraid, pretend to believe his story. Tell him it's so shocking that you need time to process it, but you love him and don't want to lose him. Make yourself into a vulnerable woman in love. Only then will he fully trust you and reveal even more vulnerabilities. I understood Soo-jin's intentions. This was a dangerous psychological game. I had to face that demon and live in hypocrisy and fear. But this was the only way. While you were buying time, Soo-jin continued to formulate a plan. I would do two things. First, I would find a way to contact the doctor who had issued Arashi a mental illness diagnosis. I would investigate whether he was truly clean. Second, I would delve deeper into Arashi's family legacy. There must be financial reasons behind all this. The plan was set. I took a deep breath and prepared to take on the most difficult role of my life. The next day, I contacted Minjin to ask to meet again. I chose a quiet park. And I cried. I cried a lot. They were tears of fear and helplessness. Minjin seemed very pleased to see me like this. He hugged me and comforted me. You're so kind. Stop crying. I know you're in shock. But everything will be okay. I'm here for you. He put on his warm, generous manly face again. I trust you. I sobbed. I believe everything you do is for her. But I'm so scared. Minjin, I'm scared I won't be able to handle it. I won't be able to face this complex truth. I acted, but those tears were also sincere. I was truly afraid. Minjin, he made me break even harder. It's okay, Yunseo. I'll be by my side. We'll overcome this together. It's true I loved error, but it was compassion and responsibility. You alone are my love and my future. I just want you to understand and accept me. Take care of Error and Heijin together. We'll be a family, a special family, but a very happy one. Trust me. He was painting a picture of a family riven with debt, a pathological future where I'd be a generous wife, caring for my husband's illegitimate child and his ailing father-in-law. He not only wanted me to remain silent, he wanted me to become his accomplice, part of his plan to control Ara. This was a cruel psychological test, a clever trap that would bind me to his life forever. He wanted me to believe in the shell of love and voluntarily walk into the heart of the hell he had created. I looked up and saw him with tearful eyes. Then, can you let me see her just once? I pleaded in a pleading voice. I just want to see her. I want to know how she's doing. Perhaps after we meet, I'll understand and accept her better. Please, Minjin. That was the ultimate goal of this play. I had to see Error. I had to see her condition with my own eyes and, if possible, find a way to send her a signal. Minjin hesitated for a moment. He looked at me with a calculating gaze. Perhaps he was weighing the risks and benefits. If he let me see him, something unexpected might happen. But if he didn't, his happy family drama couldn't continue. In the end, his overconfidence won out. He believed he had complete control. He believed Era, under the influence of drugs, would be helpless. And he believed I, a fragile woman, would just cry and accept it. Okay, he said after a moment of silence. I'll prepare. Let's go to Jeju Island together this weekend. You'll meet her. His agreement sent a pulsating wave of joy and anxiety through my heart. The elation that the plan had succeeded, yet the anxiety that I would soon have to enter the tiger's den alone. This meeting would be the final battle, the turning point. I had no idea what awaited me. I simply knew I couldn't fail. Air's life and my own depended on it. Minjin's agreement was a significant step forward, but it was also a tremendous challenge. The book said I had only a few days to prepare for a nearly impossible mission. I had to perfectly portray the role of a woman in love, while simultaneously finding a way to rescue a woman imprisoned under enemy surveillance. Immediately after meeting Minjin, I went straight to Sujin's office. We knew we couldn't act alone. This was no longer a civil case. It was taking on the tone of a criminal case. We need expert help, Sujin said. His face was deadly serious. I know someone. Kang Tae-sik. He's a former Special Forces officer who now runs a security and private detective agency. The team there is exceptionally skilled, specializing in handling such complex and sensitive cases. I immediately agreed. To deal with someone as cunning as Minjin, we needed people with experience and skill. Our meeting with Kang Tae-sik took place the afternoon. He was a man in his mid-40s, with a large, stocky build, a keen gaze, and an air of trust. After hearing our story, he wasn't surprised. He simply asked very practical questions. How many entrances and exits does the villa have? What are the security cameras like? How many security guards are there? What is the current health and psychological state of our target, Arashi? His questions made us realize how simplistic our thinking had been. Rescuing one person wasn't an emotional undertaking. It required meticulous planning and cooperation, precise down to the second. I'll send my team to Jeju Island first to scout the terrain and gather information, Kang Tae-sik said. And Yunseo, your mission in our next meeting is very important. You must be the decoy, our eyes and ears inside. You must do two things. First, determine Era's exact location and condition within the house. Second, find a way to disable or divert the surveillance camera system, even if only for a short time. He handed me several miniature devices, a hair clip with a camera and recorder attached, a device to jam camera signals within a short range, and a seemingly ordinary ring. With a slight twist of the ring, I could send an emergency signal to his team. These will protect you, he said. But your greatest weapon is your composure. Never show fear. Remember, a person's life is in your hands. While Kang Tae-sik's team was preparing in Jeju Island, Sujin also made significant progress. He visited the home of the doctor who had issued Air a false diagnosis. At first, the doctor adamantly insisted that his diagnosis was accurate and that Air had schizophrenia. But when Sujin presented evidence of suspicious phone records and financial transactions between him and Mrs. Kim, and when she mentioned his son studying abroad, the doctor began to waver. Finally, he admitted it. He had received money from Mrs. Kim and falsified medical records. He claimed he had been blackmailed, but Sujin knew this was merely an excuse for a doctor's greed and unethical behavior. Sujin recorded his entire confession. This was damning evidence that could shatter every legal shield Minjin had built. At the same time, the investigation into Arashi's family's assets yielded results. Arashi's inheritance wasn't just a few mini hotels. It included several acres of land in the heart of Jeju Island, worth hundreds of billions of won. According to Arashi's parents' will, she was supposed to have the right to dispose of this wealth once she married or turned 30. And Aji was 29 this year. Everything became clear. Minjin's ultimate goal wasn't love or a pathological obsession. It was money. He wanted to imprison Error and render her legally incompetent. Then, as guardian and father of her son, her sole heir, he would have complete control of the vast fortune. My marriage was nothing more than a farce. It was a platform to legitimize his image as a successful man and create the perfect facade to conceal his own conspiracy. When I learned the truth, my anger surged. This man was no longer human. He used love, marriage, and even his own child as tools to satisfy his endless greed. Now, the rescue plan was not just about regaining Air's freedom. but also about taking on the crime and securing justice. The weekend approached, and Minjin and I headed to Jeju Island together. All the way, he seemed delighted, constantly talking about our future and how we would learn about Hani together. I sat beside him, smiling and nodding, but a storm was brewing inside me. The hairpin was quietly tucked into my hair, and the emergency signal ring was on my finger. I was prepared. No matter what, I would not back down. The car began to turn onto the narrow road leading to the villa by the lake. From afar, I could see it, a quaint and beautiful house, yet somehow ominous and emanating a sense of death. The tiger's den was right before my eyes, and I had to enter it alone. Minjin's car slowly passed the high iron gate and entered the villa. A chill ran down my spine. The place was exquisite, with its meticulously tended gardens and blooming rose bushes. But that beauty couldn't hide the suffocating atmosphere of confinement. It was like a golden curtain. No matter how magnificent it was ultimately just a prison. Mrs. Kim was waiting at the door. She smiled angrily and took my hand. "You're here, Yunseo. Wasn't it difficult coming here?" Her hypocrisy was nauseating. I simply nodded silently. The villa's interior was luxuriously furnished, but it lacked the warmth of life. Everything was unusually quiet. Minjin led me through the living room and down a long hallway. He stopped at the wooden door. Inside Aragari, he lowered his voice, pretending to sympathize. "But remember, she's mentally unstable. Don't say anything provocative. I'll tell you what to do, and you just sit and listen." He tried to control the meeting. He was afraid that something I said would cause Error to react abnormally. I nodded obediently. "Okay. I won't embarrass you." Minjin opened the door. The room was very spacious, with a large window overlooking the lake, just as Heijin remembered. But the sunlight outside seemed unable to dispel the stale art in the room. A woman sat in a chair by the window, her back turned to us. She was thin and frail, her long hair falling over her shoulders, covering most of her face. Hearing a sound, she slowly turned around, and I held my breath. It was the lady. Her face was gaunt and her skin pale, but I could still see the artist's delicate beauty. But her eyes were completely empty, expressionless, like a still lake without a single ripple. She looked at us as if we were strangers, with eyes so empty and utterly devoid of fear. "Era, I'm home," Minjin said in a chillingly sweet voice. "I brought a friend. This is Yunseo, my bride-to-be." Era didn't respond. Her eyes scanned me absently, then turned back to the window. I knew it was the drugs. They had used high doses of tranquilizers to reduce a talented and beautiful woman to this soulless body. My heart churned with pain and anger. I moved closer, trying to find any sign of life in her eyes. "Hello," I said in a trembling voice. "I'm Yunseo." I reached out to touch her hand, but Minjin was a step faster. He gently pushed my hand away. "Don't do that, Yunseo. Don't touch her. She doesn't like strangers." He was in charge of me. He was afraid the Error and I would have any contact. Mrs. Kim stood by the door, arms folded, watching my every move with sharp eyes. I sat in the chair across from Error. I had to do something. I had to signal that I was here to rescue her. But I couldn't say anything or act out loud. Suddenly, the thought of the hairpin came to mind. I pretended my hair was messy and raised my hand to straighten it. I gently removed the hairpin and then put it back in, aiming the tiny camera attached to it at Error to capture her image. Then I began to talk. It was trivial things like the weather and the flowers in the garden. I tried to sound as natural as possible, but I was actually delivering a message. I was talking about my greatest accomplishment as a kindergarten teacher. I was talking about a bright and energetic child named Heijin. When I mentioned Heijin, I saw Era's eyelids flutter slightly. It was a very small reaction, but I saw it. She was still conscious. She was listening and understanding. Hope surged within me again. I had to find a way to send a stronger signal. I looked around the room for an opportunity. Decision stopped at the old man's television remote on a table. An idea occurred to me. I pretended to cough a few times and said to Minjin, "Minjin, the air here is a bit stuffy. Could you play some music? Something without lyrics, please?" To help Air feel more at ease, Minjin seemed reluctant, but he eventually nodded at my earnest expression. He picked up the remote and put on some quiet classical music. The music rose and wafted, breaking the tense silence. This was my chance. While Minjin and Mrs. Kim weren't paying attention, I quietly reached under the table and activated the camera jammer. There must be hidden cameras in this room, and this action would signal to King Tai-Sik's team that I was ready. Then I looked straight at Air. I tapped the table's surface with my index finger 3 times quickly, then twice slowly. It was the SOS sign. I taught it to the kids in my outdoor activity class before. I wasn't sure if Air would understand, but I could only hope. Air remained motionless, her eyes still blank. But suddenly, I saw her hands, those bony fingers, moving slightly under the table. She was tapping too. 3 times fast, 2 times slow. She understood. She was responding to my signal. My heart was about to burst. We were connected. An invisible web of passion had been established before the eyes of the 2 demons. Just then, the entire villa was suddenly plunged into darkness. The lights went out, and the music was wonderful. It was a power outage. The rescue plan had officially begun. The sudden darkness plunged everything into silence, followed by Mrs. Kim's shrill scream. "Oh my, what's going on? A power outage?" Minjin looked panicked as well. He quickly pulled out his phone and turned on the flashlight. "It's probably a power issue. Mom, calm down. I'll go out and check the circuit breaker." The faint light from Minjin's phone flickered around the room, casting distorted shadows on the walls. The situation became chaotic and urgent. This was the opportunity King Tai-Sik's team had created, and my only chance. I knew I had only minutes, or even seconds, to act. Taking advantage of the moment when Minjin and Mrs. Kim let their guard down due to an unannounced incident, I quickly ran to Air. Without saying a word, I grabbed her cold hand and pulled her tightly. Then, I whispered a single word. Heejin, the woman, who had seemed to have lost all life, suddenly reacted with astonishment. She didn't resist, but immediately stood up and followed me resolutely. Perhaps my signal had awakened a dormant will to survive within her. "Where are you two?" Minjin's growling voice came from behind. He understood my intentions. The light from his cell phone shone directly into our faces. In the darkness, his face looked hideous. "Mr. Yunseo, are you crazy?" Either she or he rushed to stop us. But just then, a terrifying bang erupted. The large window overlooking the lake shattered. 2 men in black and masks quickly rushed into the room. They were members of King Tai-Sik's team. Minjin and Mrs. Kim froze, not understanding what was happening. One of the team members rushed forward and, with expert fighting skills, knocked Minjin to the ground. Another blocked Mrs. Kim's path, his sharp gaze rendering her speechless. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. "This way. Hurry up." A man signaled to me. He pointed to a broken window. Without a moment's hesitation, I helped Era, who was still half asleep, out the window. Darkness had fallen, and the wind blowing from the lake was bitingly cold. 2 other team members were waiting, and they helped Era down the hill behind the villa and ran quickly. What about Heijin? Where is my son? Suddenly, Era spoke. Her voice was weak, but filled with panic. It was the first time she had spoken since I'd met her. Her maternal love had overcome even the effects of the drugs. The child is safe. Don't worry. We'll take him to him, the man next to her reassured her. It turned out that while I was confronting Minjin, another team had approached the star where the housemaids were staying and safely brought Hani out. Their plan was flawless. We ran across the garden to the lakeside. There, a boat was already waiting, its engine running. Behind us, Minjin shouts and curses, and the villa's alarm blared. But it was too late. As soon as we stepped foot on the boat, it sped across the still lake like an arrow. I looked back. Under the light from the villa, I saw the shadows of Minjin and Mrs. Kim standing helplessly by the broken window. They were defeated. They had been defeated terribly in the prison they had created. The boat took us to a secret dock on the other side of the lake. A car was waiting. Heijin was sitting inside the car. He was safe and sound, unharmed. When Heijin saw his mother, he burst into tears and ran to Era and hugged her. Mom, I missed you. Era also hugged her son and wept. She couldn't say anything. Just kissed his head and forehead repeatedly. I couldn't hold back my tears at that sight. They were tears of both emotion and relief. The stormy operation had succeeded. We had rescued them. That night, the car took us out of Jeju Island and to a safe place in Seoul prepared in advance by Sujin and King Taisik. Inside the car, Era didn't let go of Heijin. The effects of the anti-anxiety medication seemed to be wearing off, and instead, fatigue and exhaustion were creeping in. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered faintly, "Thank you." I held her hand. No. Get some rest now. It's over. But I knew it wasn't over. It was only just beginning. Minjin and Mrs. Kim would definitely not remain silent. They would do everything they could to silence Arashi, to find us. And more importantly, to uncover the truth behind their 5-year imprisonment. The real reason Minjin had to commit such a terrible act remains a mystery. And the only person who knew the answer was Arashi. We had to wait. We had to wait until she was stable and healthy enough to tell her entire horrific story. We moved Arashi and her mother to a luxurious, secure residence in Seoul. It was a completely safe place, where no one could find her. Sujin and King Taisik were already there, and a female therapist was also brought in to monitor and support Arashi. For the first few days, Arashi barely spoke. Her mind was severely weakened by the shock and long-term medication. She simply sat with Hani, her eyes gleaming with fear. None of us rushed her. We gave her time and a safe space to recover. The therapist was extremely dedicated. She explained that Arashi was not mentally ill at all, but simply suffered from severe anxiety and depression caused by prolonged confinement and drug abuse. These were completely treatable psychological conditions. Gradually, under our care and the immense comfort of being her son, Arashi began to show positive changes. She began eating and talking more. Then, a week after her rescue, one afternoon, with only Sujin, Arashi, and me in the room, she decided to tell us her whole story. It was a much more horrific story than we could have imagined. I and Minjin truly loved each other, Arashi said. His voice was still weak, but it became clearer. At least, that's what I thought. She told me that Minjin had been a very talented and romantic man, but also very ambitious. He loved Arashi, but he also loved her family and her fortune. After Arashi's parents passed away, Minjin became a strong support, helping her manage her hotel business. But gradually, he began to reveal his controlling nature. He didn't want Arashi to continue her career as an artist. He told her he was fully capable of taking care of her and that a woman should stay home and take care of her family. At that time, I loved and trusted him so much. Arashi stared into the distance and said, I agreed to give up my previous poetry reading and dedicate all my time to him and Heijin. But I never dreamed that it would be the first step in his plan. The culmination of the tragedy was the studio fire. It wasn't an accident, Era declared, clenching her hands. Minjin did it on purpose. That night, he gave me a very strong sleeping pill. When I woke up, everything was in shambles. My body went cold. Our intuition was right. After the fire, I completely broke down. Era continued, tears streaming down her face. That's when he took action. He told me I was so traumatized that I needed to rest somewhere quiet. He took me to that villa. At first, everything was normal, but gradually, he started giving me medication. He said it was a tonic and would help me sleep, but I knew it was just a nerve pill. The pills left me constantly in a daze and tired, leaving me powerless to resist. He completely isolated Arashi from the outside world. He cut off all contact with her and her friends, telling everyone that Era had emigrated abroad. He even offered to meet her son, fearing that her madness would affect him. He wanted to make me believe I was crazy, Era said in a voice filled with anger. He kept telling me I was delusional and that what I remembered wasn't true. He even brought in an old doctor to diagnose me with schizophrenia. I gradually began to doubt myself. At times, I even thought I was truly crazy. But why? Why did I have to do something like that? Sujin asked. Unable to hide her anger, Era took a deep breath and finally revealed the truth that explained everything. For the money. For my inheritance. According to my father's will, I could only own and dispose of the property once I was married or turned 30. Minjin knew that. He didn't want to marry me. He wanted to share the rights. He wanted everything to himself. His plan was to imprison me and render me legally incompetent before I turned 30. Then, as guardian and father of Heijin, my sole heir, he would seize the fortune. Era looked at me with an apologetic look and said, marrying you was just a show to complete his facade. He did it so no one would suspect anything when he suddenly got his hands on the money. When the story ended, the room fell silent. Sujin and I stared at each other, speechless. Human greed truly knows no bounds. For money, he was ready to trample on love and humanity, destroy a woman's life, and even steal his own relatives' childhoods. Arashi's statement and the doctor's confession recorded by Sujin became irrefutable evidence. A major criminal case was about to be opened, and this time, there would be no escape for Minjin and Mrs. Kim. Heaven's net is wide and never misses. The time has come for the wicked to pay for their sins. With Arashi's detailed statement, a recording of the doctor's confession, and medical examination results showing that long-term, high-dose tranquilizers were present in her body, Sujin had enough evidence to report to the police. The once sharp and powerful woman now collapsed on the floor, weeping and pleading. But it was too late. Their crimes were exposed in a flash. The disappearance of Jehovah shook public opinion in an instant. The media reported on the brutal conspiracy hidden beneath the guise of Japanese imperialism, and the entire society was outraged. The true faces of Minjin and Mrs. Kim were revealed to the world. Those who had once respected and defended them now turned their backs, condemning them. Faced with irrefutable evidence before the investigative authorities, Minjin and Mrs. Kim were forced to bow their heads and admit their guilt. They confessed to the entire scheme, from the arson of the studio to the falsification of medical records, to the confinement and drug abuse of Arashi. The unscrupulous doctor was also arrested and had his medical license revoked. On the day of the trial, the courtroom was packed. Sujin, Era, and I were present. Era, though still weak, was determined to confront those who had destroyed her life. She wore a white dress, Her face regained some vitality, and her eyes were no longer empty, but rather pierced with a determined and powerful light. When Minjin and Mrs. Kim were brought into the dock, they didn't dare look at her. They looked miserable and pathetic. The power, money, and arrogance they once held were gone, leaving only old age and fear. The final verdict was announced. Minjin was sentenced to 20 years in prison for various charges, including unlawful confinement, assault, fraud, and theft of property. It was a fitting sentence for the crimes he had committed. His accomplice, Mrs. Kim, was also sentenced to 12 years. All the ancestral rights they had taken from Arashi were confiscated and returned to her. Justice had been served, and no one could escape. When the judge read the verdict, Era burst into tears. But they were not tears of pain, but tears of liberation. Her 5 years of hell were finally over. Justice had been served. Sujin and I sat down with Arashi and shared the moment. We, the new women from different backgrounds, fought together and triumphed over dark forces. Friendship and courage had triumphed over the baby and greed. The case was over, but the lives of those involved had to go on. Minjin and Mrs. Kim would have to pay for their crimes within the prison walls, and Arashi would have to embark on a new, even more difficult journey to heal her spiritual wounds and rediscover herself. And although my heart was broken by false love, I have no regrets. Because I know I did the right thing. Because I know I saved someone. After the trial, Arashi's life began a new chapter. There were no more storms, but the ripples left by the past still lingered. Physical wounds could heal, but spiritual wounds required much time and patience to heal. Despite being freed, Arashi faced a new battle with her trauma and wounds. She decided to sell both her hotel and land on Jeju Island to completely disconnect from the place that had caused her so much pain. She moved to Seoul with Haejin and began living in an apartment near ours. We were no longer strangers connected by tragedy. We became close friends, true sisters. Sujin and I visited them often. We cooked together, took Haejin to the park, and shared the joys and sorrows of life. My experience as a kindergarten teacher was a great help in Haejin's readaptation to a normal life, with his mother's unwavering love and our attention. Jahan gradually became more active and brighter. The fear in his eyes was replaced by the innocence and clarity that befitted Jen. Era's healing process was even more difficult. Some nights, she still had nightmares and woke up screaming. But she was no longer alone. Haejin and I, Sujin, were always by her side. And most importantly, she rediscovered her passion, painting. At first, she painted only dark, distorted colors, as if trying to release the pressures within her. But gradually, brighter colors began to return. She painted smiling Haejin, Sujin, and me, always facing the sun. Painting became a miraculous therapy, helping her recreate her soul from within. A year later, Era held her first solo exhibition since the tragedy. The exhibition was called Regeneration. The exhibition created a huge sensation. People were amazed not only by her talent, but also by the extraordinary will of a woman who had endured hell and returned. In my case, the shock of Minjin's lies left a scar on me. I became more cautious in relationships and less trusting of others. I rejected several confessions and decided to spend time with myself, Jel, and my small family of Era and Haejin. I hadn't closed my heart, but I knew it needed time to truly heal. I was no longer the naive and dreamy kindergarten teacher Yunseo I once was. I became stronger and more mature. I realized that a woman's worth doesn't depend on having the perfect man by her side, but on her courage to fight for justice, her kind heart, and her ability to stand firmly on her own 2 feet. I didn't have a perfect wedding or an ideal husband, but I do have a precious friendship and a child who loves me like family. And most importantly, I have a peaceful conscience. I'm proud of myself for not turning a blind eye to my child's plea for help. I'm proud of myself for contributing to finding justice for this unfortunate woman. The ending of this story isn't one of new love, but of courage and the triumph of humanity. To many, it might seem an imperfect ending. But to me, it's the most perfect ending. And I believe that somewhere in the future, a dawn of true happiness still awaits me, a dawn built on the foundations of kindness and strength.